If in the past month you've considered buying a new mouthpiece, changing your reeds, getting a new barrel, or any kind of equipment changes because you think that it's going to make playing the clarinet easy for you, I have bad news. It's probably not going to make a difference, but I am going to share some of the key fundamentals that will actually fix those problems you're experiencing. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at QuickStartClarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. So let's say you've been having some difficulties in your clarinet playing. Maybe crossing the break is a little bit bumpy, you're getting some squeaks, maybe when you try to articulate the high notes, you're getting some undertones, or maybe you just have kind of a generally fuzzy or stuffy sound that you're not liking very much. And I totally understand how tempting it can be to think, ooh, I wonder if like maybe a different mouthpiece or different reeds or something like that would make a difference and make it easier and sort of clear up the sound, get crossing the break to go more smoothly, get the articulation to come out more clearly, and be sort of that magic solution that just solves all of those frustrations that you're having and all those problems that you're encountering. Well, I have bad news. It's not going to make that much of a difference. And you probably already know this to be the case because I bet you've tried other mouthpieces before. And I think we all kind of have this sort of sunk cost fallacy where we buy a new mouthpiece and we play it and we think, I spent $100 on this mouthpiece. Like, yeah, I think it's making a little bit of a difference. Like, it's a little bit easier to play and it sounds a little bit better. But if we're really honest with ourselves, did it really make that much of a difference? And there are some situations where changing your mouthpiece or changing your reed can make big, significant differences in your playing. And I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the video. But I think a much, much more vast majority of the time, the real differences you need to make are in your fundamentals. And this is absolutely the case. If you've already changed mouthpieces in like the last 6 months and you're still running into the same problems, it's probably not the equipment. It's probably something in your fundamentals. So let's talk about how we can solve some of those problems with actually good fundamentals of clarinet playing. So let's take crossing the break as sort of our first problem that you may be encountering and trying to fix with equipment. You're probably thinking to yourself, oh, I'm just not very good at crossing the break, or I need to practice more, I need to develop my embouchure more, and through enough repetitions, eventually I'll be able to cross the break smoothly. But I'll be honest with you, when I teach my students to cross the break, they're usually able to cross the break smoothly in one lesson. That's all it takes if you're doing it right. So if you've been struggling with crossing the break for a while now, there's probably some things that you aren't doing well and some things that you need to put into practice. The fundamental that correlates with not being able to cross the break effectively is the fingers. The actual fingers and covering the holes really securely is the thing to be working on. We think that it's mouthpiece, reed, air, embouchure stuff, because sometimes it is, and sometimes we get afraid of squeaking when we cross the break, so we back off the air or tighten up the embouchure and try to control it more. Or we've just heard that crossing the break is a challenging thing on the instrument, so we're trying to work at it and make it go better, and sometimes even working with our fingers and getting tension in our fingers. And all of that is getting in your way. So much of clarinet playing and being an effective clarinet player is actually getting out of your own way and just relaxing and just having steady and stable embouchure and air support with relaxed fingers that really cover the holes. So if you're having issues crossing the break, you don't need a new mouthpiece, you don't need a new ligature, you don't need to change reeds. What you need to do is have steadier air and embouchure and relax your fingers so that they really securely cover the holes. Those are the fundamentals rather than solving it from the equipment side. Let's take another one. Let's say you have a generally fuzzy or kind of stuffy sound and you're thinking, oh man, something about this equipment like feels like there's like a cotton ball plugging it up and just everything sounds really stuffy and not good. maybe that could be a reed issue, but there's always a balance between what we're putting in and what the equipment wants. So if things are sounding stuffy, there's probably stuff that you're doing that can make it sound clearer. So some of those things might be changing your embouchure a bit. What really often happens is that we put too little reed in our mouth and start sort of pinching off the tip of the reed, and that causes it to dampen the vibrations and kind of stuff everything up, where we're dampening the vibrations of the reed, but we're pushing into the reed, and we're kind of creating this isometric exercise where we're pushing against ourselves by pinching off the reed and not letting it vibrate. So put more reed in your mouth, more mouthpiece in your mouth, so that you get more reed vibrating and that air can sort of push through and actually get that clear sound that you want. It could also be sort of the shape of your embouchure. If you're biting and putting too much pressure this way, that could cause it. If you have a squishy lip, either because it's too far out or too far over and isn't a firm surface for the reed to vibrate against, then that's going to be dampening the vibrations of the reed and again creating that sort of isometric exercise where you're pushing against yourself and you're actually creating the stuffiness. So again, we need to get out of our way with those fundamentals and let the reed vibrate and blow through it. And let's take the last example of sort of thuddy articulation or undertones or squeaks, especially as you try to articulate, maybe even particularly staccato articulation up in the upper clarion. This is one of the greatest frustrations and one of the tricky bits of playing the clarinet. And there is a little bit of an equipment issue here, and that's the physics of the instrument, because those upper clarion notes, so like the G right above the staff, G, A, B, C, those notes up there, don't really align well with the physics of the instrument. The way it should work is that the register key should be, I think, a third of the way from where the air is actually coming out, if I remember my physics correctly, but the register key should be at that sort of third or quarter of the way down. And when you look at like F, E, and D, the register key is in a pretty optimal position for the physics of the instrument. But as you get to G, especially A, B, and C, the register key is no longer in the optimal position to get those notes to come out smoothly and cleanly and clearly. This becomes such a significant problem on bass clarinet that there's actually two register keys. This is also true for saxophone, has two register keys as well. Clarinet, for whatever reason, just defies the laws of physics and only has the one register key, and we have to sort of support it to keep those notes coming out clear and full. So it's is an equipment issue, but it's not an equipment issue you can fix. There's no mouthpiece that overcomes the position of the register key. There's no clarinets that I can think of off the top of my head that have two register keys for a normal B flat or A clarinet. So you have to figure out how to get those to work with your fundamentals. So when it comes to articulation, what often might be the case is that you're doing something where you're moving your tongue too much. So you're moving out of position to get those notes sounding good. You're tightening your embouchure because, again, you're trying to control those notes. Or you're doing something with the air. This is a very common thing with articulation because when we articulate, even if it's legato, but even more so when it's staccato, there's silence in the sound and the sound stops. And it's so tempting to stop the air when you stop the sound, and then we again don't have that good air support we need to overcome the physics of the instrument and get it to stay up in that upper register. So those are all kinds of fundamental things that could be going wrong when it comes to articulating up in that upper register. And again, it's always a balance between us and the equipment. We need to figure out when we're playing the long tone and the note is coming out, what inputs are we providing to get the note to come out? Because if you're getting the note to come out when you're playing it as a long tone or playing it slurred, then you absolutely can get it to come out when you're articulating as well. You just need to keep those inputs steady from the long tone or the slurred notes to the articulated notes, which is challenging because you are moving the tongue. But spoiler alert, getting a new mouthpiece, getting new reeds, is not going to help you to move your tongue better and move your tongue more efficiently or effectively or help you to get out of your own way. It's just going to add more variables and more complications that you're trying to figure out and trying to sort out. So hopefully this is making sense and you're seeing how if you've been thinking about upgrading your equipment, it's actually a much better idea to upgrade your fundamentals. And I do have sort of one tip where it would actually be appropriate to upgrade your equipment, which I'll talk about in a moment. But first, if this sort of fundamental stuff resonated with you, I have a new free training. You can go to quickstartclarinet.com/fundamentals, and you can learn the 5 fundamentals that cover all of the fundamentals you need for clarinet and music. This video, what we were talking about with the equipment changes, pretty much only covered sound quality and notes, which are 2 of those fundamentals. So there's 3 other fundamentals that I cover in that training. So if you liked this and can see how, oh yeah, I should get into those fundamentals, I think that would help me move forward in my clarinet journey and help solve some of those problems, and maybe some of those problems that haven't just been related to your equipment or you've been thinking they've been related to your equipment, but other problems as well, then check that out at quickstartclarinet.com/fundamentals. Now, when is it actually the equipment, and when would actually getting a new mouthpiece or maybe even a new clarinet really truly make a significant difference in the ease of playing? This is kind of rare, but it does come up and it is important. So generally, I'm always like, you figure out your fundamentals and get the equipment to work, but there are occasions where the equipment will really be holding you back no matter how much work you're putting into the fundamentals. And the way to know if this is the case is if you're continuously struggling. If you've been working at this and working and working and working and it's just not coming together and you're not fixing those things no matter how much effort you put into the fundamentals, then it might be an equipment thing. Another way to know it is if it's much more consistently wrong than right. If you're able to get it correct even 40% of the time and you're able to get it to come out the way that you want, even just 40% of the time, it's probably not the equipment, and it's probably something that you're doing, and you need to hone in on what you're doing to get it to go correct and be in control of that to be able to get it to go correct more than 40% of the time. But if you're finding that you just can't get it, like maybe 10% of the time it comes out okay, but like 90% of the time or 80% of the time it's just really not feeling good, then it might be the equipment, and it might be okay to actually blame the equipment and upgrade the equipment. Another thing to look at too with your mouthpiece in particular, if your mouthpiece is really dinged up or it has any like little chips in the tip or anything like that, or it's just really old and beat up in general, a new mouthpiece might really make a big difference. With the clarinet itself, if there's any sort of leaking or any issues like that, then definitely getting your clarinet repaired would be very valuable and very helpful. A leaky instrument sometimes is very obvious, where you just can't play one note, or sort of any notes lower than a certain point just don't work at all, or really stuffy or really easily squeak, and again, less than 10% of the time come out with a good sound, then that's an obvious leak and you have something that could get fixed there and make a big difference. Sometimes the leaks are a little bit more subtle than that, and just a little leak will make things just a little bit harder all the time. So getting a new mouthpiece, probably not worth it. Taking your clarinet into a good repair person to have them sort of look it over and get it sealing really well, definitely worth it, and a much more valuable use of your $100 than getting a new mouthpiece, unless your mouthpiece is really beat up and damaged, of course. The last point of equipment that might actually be really worth looking at is your reed strength, and making sure your reed strength matches your mouthpiece pretty well. So what we want is reeds and mouthpieces that work well together, and then we work well with that too. So like I was saying before, the balance between our input and what the equipment wants. We might have equipment that wants really strong input, so we need to provide that strong input to get it to work. We might have equipment that likes weaker and sort of less input and is a little bit more free blowing and easy to play. Then we need to be a little bit more gentle, a little more open with the embouchure, maybe not even quite so forceful with the air. But you can have a mouthpiece that wants a lot of oomph and strength in the support, but a reed that's lighter and doesn't want that, then you're going to run into trouble where do you support a little bit for the reed or a lot of it for the mouthpiece, and you can't get a balance there. So making sure that your reed strength matches well with your mouthpiece is super important. I have a video on that you can get more information about how that works and what you're looking for there. But those are the rarer circumstances where changing the equipment might actually make a difference, but more likely is those fundamentals will make the difference. And with good fundamentals, you can make pretty much any equipment work. So those are the things to lean into. And again, you can go to quickstartclarinet.com/fundamentals to learn all 5 of the core fundamentals that when you really get those working together, you can continue to grow and move forward on your clarinet journey to whatever the next level is for you, and the next level after that, and the next level after that, because all playing, in my opinion, comes down to those core fundamentals. So I hope that this has been helpful. I hope this is giving you some food for thought and maybe reconsidering if the equipment is actually the problem, or if that's just been sort of an excuse that you've been telling yourself. Clarinetists love to blame our equipment, but I promise it's in those fundamentals. So thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the QuickStart Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.